everybody. Welcome back. Hope you're feeling refreshed, got a little chance to stretch, and are ready for our next technical session. Again, this is on data methods and techniques. And for our first talk, I'd like to introduce Riley Mulligan, a geoscientist here at the OGS, who has prepared a pre-recorded presentation for us. So take it away, Riley.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're enjoying the conference so far. Today, I'm going to be giving a brief overview presentation on some of the work that's being done as part of a collaborative project between the Ontario Geological Survey and the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, involving the integration of geological data into the Provincial Groundwater Monitoring Network. In this talk, I'm going to very quickly go through the background and some of the previous work that's been done so far before elaborating a little bit on some of the current work both in the bedrock and some of the stumbling blocks we're dealing with in the quaternary sediments. And then I'll quickly outline some of the deliverables that are going to make up this project as it unfolds. As a very brief overview, the Provincial Groundwater Monitoring Network currently consists of 533 wells spread across the province, though there's very clear increased distribution in southern Ontario. And these wells provide an ability to give us a long-term view of changes in groundwater levels and chemistry across the province. And at many sites, there are upgraded systems that allow for the monitoring of precipitation, stream flow, and/or climate. And this data set and network as a whole provides an important basis to allow for evaluations of groundwater resource decisions made at both local and regional scales. And in particular, it's because it consists of wells that are screened in both quaternary sediments as well as underlying bedrock formations. However, at present, there's no current systematic understanding of the stratigraphic context of well screens and open hole interval. And as you can imagine, that does provide a sort of restricted capacity to correlate changes in observed fluctuations in those conditions across different wells in different parts of the province. And that's where we come into play at the Ontario Geological Survey. We're well suited to providing this regional geological and stratigraphic information into PGMN records. And we'll be doing that through integration of the available high quality data sets coming from three primary sources. The first is published three-dimensional geological models for both bedrock and quaternary sediments that have a regional coverage across southern Ontario. The second is published maps, LiDAR data, and available thesis reports and other similar data. And the third is by manual evaluation of individual well records within the PGMN, as well as nearby data from landforms and superficial geological factors. Now, for areas where there are currently three-dimensional models currently published, this is a pretty straightforward exercise. Well screen information can be extracted directly from completed models where PGMN wells contain reliable location and screen depth information. Additionally, it's a very straightforward process for the bedrock model where the development of that model involves standardization of all the available nomenclature for stratigraphic units. Whereas in the quaternary models, they were completed by multiple sources and at different scales, so there is going to be a need to update or provide translations to the multiple sets of nomenclature currently in use. Just to give a bit of a more visual picture of that, you can see it's a pretty seamless exercise to extract the information on screen depths from completed boreholes and well intervals where we have the necessary depth information. But I think there's potential to go beyond that and take a more robust look at the presence and distribution or thickness of the important regional aquifer and aquitard units in and around that well site so that we can hopefully provide an enhanced view of potential connections between different flow systems. And this type of data and analysis will be available for 330 wells within provincial scale bedrock and sediment models, as well as an additional 95 which are located within sort of more detailed or at least higher resolution of layers within our OGS three-dimensional sediment models. And we want to take this work a little bit further to look not just down the PGMN well record itself, but at the local area around it as well. And that's where our seamless maps come back into play. Because they're fully attributed and contain a lot more information that are initially visible just on display of the maps, we want to bring these back in to see if there's some local conditions that might be relevant in terms of helping explain some of the changes or trends we see in the 2+ decades of PGMN well records. And I think it's worth highlighting the fact that we're slowly starting to shift these maps towards an evergreen status by providing updates to both superficial geology, bedrock geology, and karst. But there are some areas where newer data may supersede some of the published maps that we currently have. And one of the most important data sets that has come out in recent years is the availability of regional scale high resolution LiDAR data. So the map on the right is showing the distribution of half-meter resolution LiDAR data in Northern Ontario, and then LiDAR data for Southern Ontario is shown now. And really what this does is provide an unparalleled view of terrain features at 416 of the 427 well sites on public land within the network. And this really allows for not just a view of the terrain, but also manual evaluation of positional accuracy. And it just allows for such an important platform to understand the stratigraphic framework of superficial features and decode what we're seeing in the terrain and superficial geology that's currently available on our maps. And where this really comes into play is our ability to manually inspect and assess well records within the PGMN database outside of our 3D model areas. So knowing where the well started, as far as what stratigraphic unit, really increases our confidence in interpreting the layers as you move down through some of these deeper well records. So just as a quick example, here's an example from southwestern Ontario, south of the Bruce Peninsula. And this PGMN well is located in between two prominent moraine ridges and immediately east of a large ice contact esker complex and downflow of these streamlined landforms to the north. And when we combine this data with what we're seeing in the published superficial geology maps, it really lets us understand what we're seeing in the geology and make the best use of that as far as turning that into an understanding of what we're seeing in the well records. So these moraine ridges are composed of a clay till. The location in between is infilled by muds at surface. And then in between the moraine ridges and upflow where the streamlined landforms exist are regional last glacial maximum tills. And essentially that translates pretty much on a one-to-one basis with what we're seeing in the well record and allows us to interpret this brown sand that is screened as a pre-LGM sandy deposit that is sort of overlying the bedrock interface at this location. This type of LiDAR guided manual well record inspection has now been done on 75 of the 97 wells that are present outside of the 3D model areas. And what I just quickly want to highlight is our ability to now add important information from the immediate areas around the well that might add some important context to help understand some of the changes we're seeing either in chemistry or in water level responses to different climates, climate changes and wet or dry years within individual well records. So I think it allows us to do a lot more than just assign stratigraphy. We're going to get a more complete picture based on the superficial context of the well as well. But one of the stumbling blocks we're currently dealing with is the need for a unified quaternary sediment framework so that we have a consistent and useful set of terms that can be applied to the geology of all of Ontario. Within Southern Ontario, the various works that have been completed so far, depending on the resolution and scale at the work being completed, you might see the sediments being modeled in one layer or up to 33 total layers in all of our combined 3D regional models that we've done at the OGS so far. And what we're looking for is a way to distill that into a set of terms that will be simple and translatable at the provincial scale. And what we're seeing in the colored column in the table on the right is our current attempt at doing that. And it's something that's still underway, but I think we're getting pretty close to something we're happy with. And I just think it's worth mentioning that because this nomenclature stumbling block we're dealing with isn't just relevant for this PGMN study, it has a wide range of potential uses that we can apply it to moving forward, like translating our superficial geology maps and recoding some of our 3D products into this new framework so that we can make the best use of these data sets at the different scales that they were conducted at. Now, the next steps in the project involve coding wells in bedrock outside of the 3D model area for Southern Ontario, as well as completing assessment of hydrogeologic conditions around wells across the province. And then we really want to evaluate the possibility for future data sets that we can integrate into this, whether those are currently available in Geology Ontario, like geochemistry or hydrogeological data, or whether it's the need to bring in additional monitoring networks across the province that might be worth incorporating into a one-stop shop for all this type of data. And ultimately, this will all be delivered as a groundwater resource study that will comprise a report that outlines all the major findings and methodology, but more importantly, a database that contains all the available geological and hydrological information, both delivered through the MEC portal as well as the Geology Ontario geospatial data search. So we're hopefully going to be delivering this both as a database as well as a map product that will allow for a much easier world in searching for and finding these data. And that's all I wanted to go over today. I just want to thank everyone for your time, and importantly want to reiterate that we've got our contact information here. If there's anything that jumped out at you today, or you have any ideas about additional things we should be considering as this project moves forward, please don't hesitate to reach out to any one of us. We'd be happy to hear from you as we continue to drive this project forward. Thank you very much.
Awesome, and thank you, Riley.